What is up, my guys? It's your boy Jabrak back with another video. Going to discuss. I know I typically have a little bit of mental resistance whenever I start talking about scripture, and I kind of hate that. But I want to switch gears a little bit, and just saw this. I'm a follower of Legion of Men YouTube channel. Shout out to Legion of Men, by the way. I don't always agree with everything that he says, but one thing that I do I do think that men do have a responsibility to society, but that's a different discussion. I think that society has failed men in a lot of ways, and he was commenting on this this Fox News clip of Tommy Lauren and Laura Ingraham talking about this phenomena called stay-at-home sons, and I'm gonna say I identify with this a little bit because my current situation is that of this so-called trending stay-at-home son. Uh, a guy in his 20s can't seem to get a job, still living at home in what effectively is my mother's basement. Uh, Not really doing from the world standard, not really doing anything with my life, and playing video games, hoping, basically begging on the internet. I'm gonna admit this isn't an ideal situation. This if it were up to me and I had full if I could redo my life over again, I would do whatever I could to not be in this position. That being said, this is where the Lord has brought me, and I my intention is to be faithful with what I've been given and serve the best that I can, even in my failures and my struggles and my disappointments and my frustrations with him. I take my emotions to the Lord, and I don't, I'm not the guy who knows everything. He knows everything. He's got access to all the information, so I don't ever claim to criticize the way that the Lord does things or the way that he orders our steps. What I want to comment on is society's treatment toward young men in this situation, not only the greater corporate, not only the greater corporate environment, not only society as a political landscape or a socioeconomic landscape, but also from a familial standpoint. People are really hard on young men, and young men, especially Gen Z young men, have been dealt a very, very rough hand, a very bad hand in a very ruthless, overextending society. A very extend, a deal that's gone poorly. We're overextended. We're all in on the bet, and our cards are not adding up. Cards are not high rolling. It's being a dude in this situation has been very stressful. I do have student loans. I never ended up getting my degree. I should have quit way I should have quit way sooner than I had. I even the the Lord had even told me years ago that I should have quit school a long time ago, years ago when I first came to Christ. And I'm gonna admit I didn't listen when I should have, and I accrued a lot more debt because I stuck with something I never was supposed to be in. I you know you live and you learn. You All you can do is know better and do better in the future. That being said, society has dealt men a very bad hand. Job hunting has been Job hunting has never been harder. Uh, Job openings have never been scarcer, and honestly, we're probably with the development of AI and especially AI's ability to phase out creative type jobs, white collar jobs, and if and the sooner and once we start embodying them, once we start giving them limbs and body parts and start planting algorithmic tech in factories and manufacturing, those jobs will start to disappear too. Well, Gen Z men are in for a very rough period. Honestly, UBI, Universal Basic Income, well, as Elon Musk puts it, universal high income is going to be necessary. Not that the government is ever going to have the courage to implement that, because you know a lot of American policy, speaking as an American, a lot of American policy for the past several decades, really the past half century, has been the people who are now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s creating a lot of the political landscape, creating a lot of the policies that the United States operates under. And because of that, all of their policies end up favoring that class of society, the boomer generation. I hate saying, I hate putting it that way. I hate sticking labels on people. That being said, this is a place where the label is kind of valid. Is that the boomer generation has profited and lived off of the future. Not, and I don't mean boomers in general, because boomers are also not doing well financially. The boomers who didn't, the boomers who didn't, how to say, not make it big, but the boomers who didn't benefit from the generational policy are also doing extremely poorly in the socioeconomic landscape. And the they're a significant portion of the homeless population. They're a significant portion of those in high amounts of debt, medical debt, um, overextended living, and they're the generation that's about to retire and probably won't be able to. That being said, the boomers who did benefit off of Gen Z, who did benefit off of highest the highest degree of policy making, well, policy involvement in history, they have stolen the futures of their children and grandchildren. Millennials are, let's be honest, millennials are struggling financially. Not very few were able to get into real estate and buying a house, family planning, starting families, having children. Gen Z even less so. Somehow it ended up being a generational discussion, but I'm here to talk about young men. So this phenomena about stay-at-home sons is definitely a societal issue. I think that society does have a responsibility to elevate young men, because the young men of today are going to be the old men of tomorrow. Figuratively speaking. And if the young men of today cannot develop skills, cannot gain experience in this time, if we don't have access to jobs, there's not really much that we can do. If we don't have access to mentorships, internships, some form of elevation system, some system of mentoring, getting people plugged in, getting people into communities that they can earn an income, be part of a family, be part of an organization, be part of a mission. You're gonna end up, if we cannot do that, if we can't get these young men plugged in, we're gonna see them drifting towards, well, alternative lifestyles. There was something that a preacher, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was something a preacher said that impacted me really strongly, and it's that men will go where they are celebrated. So, like, you see a lot of men, myself included, drifting towards video games, finding a lot of sense of sometimes identity, but more oftentimes accomplishment and belonging in video games. And it's because video games do a really good job of celebrating victory and and not penalizing defeat. Whereas the real world has a very very has a bad habit of penalizing defeat very heavily and refusing to acknowledge victories. It's a it's a consequence of living in a highly individualistic society where some of the where a lot of what used to be celebrated is now considered the bare minimum. And because men are constantly told that we're not enough and nothing that we do will ever be enough, we're by and large checking out of society. Well, honestly, what choice do we have? Society refuses to grant us opportunities to move up more easily, especially in American society where we don't have access to jobs that, it's not easy for a dude without a degree to get a job that can provide a wage that would enable him to get a house in a reasonable amount of time, plan a wedding, and family plan, plan for children in a reasonable amount of time. There's just no job like that in the United States anymore. There's no opportunities in the United States like that anymore. And I think that's a failure of the government's, the I think that's a failure of, I'm very individualistically conservative, but collectively liberal. I think the government has responsibilities to its citizens. I think that the government has responsibilities to elevate people of talent, find ways to seek out methods of identifying talented individuals and then properly elevating them without developing issues in personality. So social programs are a, I think social programs are necessary in order to elevate the talented members of society, the intelligent members of society, the capable members of society who otherwise wouldn't be discovered. The diamonds in the rough that are, you know, that are found in the communities that you wouldn't normally find them. The people who are really good with numbers, really good with words, really good with managerial skills or entrepreneurial abilities. I think the government has a responsibility, and yeah, the government does have a responsibility to seek out these individuals and elevate them to positions where they can succeed and where they can flourish. And the government doesn't do a good job of that in the West because of our hyper individualistic culture. And it's not something that a collectivist, switching to a collectivist culture would necessarily fix either, because a collectivist culture is going to prioritize, you can end up sacrificing a talented individual for the sake of the greater good of the culture, the greater good of the organization, which we're seeing in countries like Japan and China, where they can oppress the individual, and oftentimes it's a slippery slope into oppressing the many in order to preserve the reputation or the identity of the collective. That being said, this is just the opinion of a stay-at-home son, a so-called deadbeat loser of society, with a lot of opinions and a lot of things to say about how things should be. But you know, like I said, I'm not used to people caring about what I have to say. But when something needs to be said, if somebody's not saying it, I suppose the Lord will choose me. The Lord will send me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please give this video a like and subscribe. And if you feel led to support the channel, there are links to my Cash App and Venmo in my bio on my channel page. In any case, the Lord be with you all. Stay in prayer, stay strong, stay diligent, and keep the faith. Have a blessed day, y'all.